Hello, Daisy Cakes! Today, we're going to be looking at more of the retro Hugos, this time for 1946. Why? Because I am Daisy Ex Machina, the drag queen detective who investigates all things speculative in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. If you don't know, the retro Hugos were awarded much later than the years they were nominated from to sort of fill out those years of the golden age of science fiction where the Hugos weren't awarded. So, 1946, retro Hugos were awarded in 1996. And what I'm going to be doing is going through all the nominees, tell you who the winner is, but then pick one book for my TBR based on the blurbs. And I'm not necessarily going to pick the winner. And the reason I'm doing this is to try to find new authors and books from the golden age that I have not read before, or that I'm not that familiar with, or maybe just finding a work that I've been wanting to read but have been putting off. So let's go ahead and get started by reading the nominees. The nominees are Isaac Asimov for The Mule, A.E. Van Vogt for The World of Null-A, C.S. Lewis for That Hideous Strength, also known as The Tortured Planet, Fritz Leiber for Destiny x3, and finally, Edmond Hamilton, writing as Brett Sterling, for Red Son of Danger, also known as Danger Planet. And the winner is The Mule by Isaac Asimov. Okay, so let's go through each of these books, and we're going to be starting with Isaac Asimov's The Mule, which I've read before because it is part of the Foundation series. And it's, I think, on the second Foundation book. It's Foundation and Empire, second Foundation. So Foundation and Empire, I believe, The Mule is included in. So it's probably a shorter work. Again, the Foundation novels are stitch-up novels or fix-up novels where shorter works have been put together as a single novel, which is very common for the first generation of science fiction novels in the 50s, 60s. Anyway, let's go ahead and read the blurb for The Mule. Again, this is Foundation, which actually has been a surprisingly good series on Apple TV. At least I found it so. If you want me to do a video on that, let me know down in the comments. Okay, I'm going to be reading the blurb from Foundation and Empire because I couldn't find a complete blurb in Goodreads for just The Mule. Foundation and Empire tells the incredible story of a new breed of man who create a new force for galactic government. Thus, the Foundation hurtles into conflict with the decadent, decrepit First Empire. In this struggle for power amid the chaos of the stars, man stands at the threshold of a new enlightened life, which could easily be put aside for the old forces of barbarism. The Foundation novels of Isaac Asimov constitute what is very likely the most famed epic in all of science fiction. Okay, didn't really address who the Mule was. The Mule is a mutant, I guess, who can't reproduce. That's why he's called the Mule. Anyway, the Mule wasn't predicted by psychohistory, so it throws a wrench into the predictions on how to avoid the extinction of the human race. So, again, I've read this story before, so I won't be picking it to add to my TBR. Anyway, moving right along, A.E. Van Vogt's The World of Null-A. Now, I've read an A.E. Van Vogt novel, Slan, for these retro Hugos, so I'm kind of interested in this. The classic novel of non-Aristotelian logic and the coming race of supermen. It is the year 2650 and Earth hath become a world of non-Aristotelian or Null-A. This is the story of Gilbert Gosson, who lives in that future world where the games machine, made up of 25,000 electronic brains, sets the course of people's lives. Gosson isn't even sure of his own identity, but realizes he has some remarkable abilities and sets out to use them to discover who has made him a pawn in an interstellar plot. Science fiction grandmaster A.E. Van Vogt was one of the giants of the 1940s, the golden age of classic SF. Of his masterpieces, The World of Null-A is his most famous and most influential. Published in 1949, it was the first major trade science fiction hardcover and has been in print in various editions ever since. The entire careers of Philip K. Dick, Keith Laumer, Alfred Bester, Charles Harness, and Philip Jose Farmer were created or influenced by The World of Null-A, and so it is required reading for anyone who wishes to know the canon of SF classics. Okay, I am almost sold on The World of Null-A. It's at the top of the list. I am very curious about this. It almost sounds like a world controlled by computers. Almost sounds like reality now. Next up is That Hideous Strength, which I've read before. I've read the Space Trilogy, C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy, I believe a couple times. But I'll go ahead and read the blurb, but I won't be picking it because I've read it. The third novel in the science fiction trilogy by C.S. Lewis, the final story is set on Earth and tells of a terrifying conspiracy against humanity. The story surrounds Mark and Jane Studdick, a newly married couple. Mark is a sociologist who is enticed to join an organization called NICE, which aims to control all human life. His wife, meanwhile, has bizarre prophetic dreams about a decapitated scientist, Alcazan. As Mark is drawn inextricably into the sinister organization, he discovers the truth of his wife's dreams when he meets the literal head of Alcazan, which is being kept alive by infusions of blood. Jane seeks help concerning her dreams at a community called St. Anne's, where she meets their leader, Dr. Ransom, the main character of the previous two titles of the trilogy. The story ends in a final spectacular scene at the NICE headquarters, where Merlin appears to confront the powers of hell. Again, if you're only familiar with C.S. Lewis's Narnia series, you may be surprised at this adult science fiction series. There are some Christian themes, but that's what C.S. Lewis does. And I highly recommend the entire trilogy. I think it stands the test of time, but if you disagree, let me know. Next up is Destiny Times 3 by Fritz Leiber. I really like Fritz Leiber. I love Conjure Wife, one of my favorite books. So I'm very curious about this one because I have not read it. The probability machine made differing timelines of alternate universes real enough to exist side by side and to be invaded. Destiny Times 3 is a classic alternate timeline science fiction novel by American writer Fritz Leiber. It first appeared in Astounding Science Fiction as a two-part serial in March and April of 1945. I'm very curious about a story of alternate universes, which seems to be popular now, but I don't know if Fritz Leiber was the first, but this was in 1945, so quite some time ago. It just makes me curious about the origins of what is now a very popular science fiction theme. Moving on. Okay, this next one, Red Son of Danger. I'm curious insofar as last time I picked Lee Brackett's novel, Shadow of Remorse, who is the wife of Edmond Hamilton, who writes under the pen name, I believe, of Brett Sterling. What I didn't know is this is number 18 of a series called Captain Future. What? The cover is hilarious. Okay, anyway, I will read the blurb for the first, or the number 18 of Captain Future, Red Son of Danger. Captain Future, the ace of space, born and raised on the moon, Kurt Newton survived the murder of his scientist parents to become the protector of the galaxy known as Captain Future. With his future men, Greg, the giant robot, Otho, the shape-shifting android, and Simon Wright, the living brain, he patrols the solar system in the fastest ship ever constructed, the Comet, pursuing human monsters and alien threats to Earth and her neighbor planets. The exploits of Captain Future, Wizard of Science, originally appeared in the pages of Captain Future in Startling Stories magazines back in the days before NASA's manned space program. Captain Future returns in these vintage pulp tales reissued for today's readers in electronic format. Okay, this sounds like one of those really cheesy science fiction, space opera, Flash Gordon type of radio dramas, back in the 40s. And I am very curious about this one. It seems, even back then, it seems tongue-in-cheek. So I wonder if it's funny. It sounds funny. I'd be disappointed if it wasn't at least a little bit satirical or a little bit of a parody of space opera. I don't know, though. Okay, I will tell you the two I'm thinking of. A.E. Van Vogt's The World of Null-A and Edmond Hamilton's Red Son of Danger. I've read the Asimov before. I've read the C.S. Lewis before. Fritz Leiber I know and I like, but alternate history novel, I don't think I'm into it right now. Here's the thing. I've read A.E. Van Vogt before in Slan. I kind of think I know what I'm going to get. No idea about Edmond Hamilton. All I know about him is that I've read his wife's work, Lee Brackett. I think I'm going to go with Red Son of Danger, which is an episode of Captain Future. I'm kind of excited to read this one, to be honest. Okay, what I want to know is which of these have you read or do you want to read? Let me know down in the comments. And while you're there, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. As soon as I finish reading it, I will review Captain Future number 18, Red Son of Danger, and then move on to the next Retro Hugo. Until we meet again, may all the books you read be